So the knife tool in Blender is an incredibly powerful tool. It can be accessed by going into edit mode by either clicking up here or hitting tab. Over on the left, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see knife tool. So it's hotkeyed to K, so that's how I'm going to use it, right? So if I tap K, I get this little scalpel picture and a little green dot showing where I'm currently slicing, or where I'm about to begin slicing, sorry. If I left click, it's going to start a knife cut on that point, and if I click down here, it's going to continue a knife cut all the way down. You can sort of see through this edge, and it's left these like red dots here. If I hit enter, it will confirm that action, and it'll leave these new vertices that are sort of sliced here. Let's just do that again by pressing K, click, and then click again. If I hit escape instead of enter, it's going to cancel the action entirely, right? Tapping K, if I click and then click again, and then let's say I want to make this cut, I want to cut like this shape here. If I double click on the end point here, it's going to finish that current loop and allow me to make another loop cut. This could be useful if you want to make several sort of consecutive cuts, one after the other. And then eventually after I'm done, I'll hit enter to confirm all of these. It'll specifically put in the edges that we've asked for, but then it adds enough extra geometry that Blender requires to sort of finish the shape. So having these extra edges here aren't, really a problem, because I'll give you an example. If I cut like a square like this, and then I tap enter, it's going to give me exactly the square that I've cut. This is what I've asked for, and then it's going to append it with these extra edges here. These edges actually cannot be deleted. If I try and dissolve these, they're not going to go anywhere. And it'll only be after I give it a different edge that Blender will allow me to delete that edge, right? So Blender just needs these. So you don't have to be freaked out by this geometry. It is what it is. All right, so delete all that. So we've also got Shift K, right? Which is a face limitation mode. So if I actually select these faces, like say these two, and then hold Shift and hit K, now my slices are only going to affect these faces. So if I slice from here to here, and then around, and then back to here, do you see how it didn't slice over here? It only constrained to the existing faces. That's with Shift K, right? With the knife tool active again, if I'm holding Shift, this is the midpoint snap tool. So if I mouse over this line, it's just going to immediately say, I'm going to begin this cut from this midpoint. And if I mouse over this one, it says I'm going to send the cut to that midpoint. Like that, right? You can see as well, if we're cutting and it's near an edge, we snap to the edge. If I hold Control, all snapping is disabled. It will just run the cuts from exactly where I click, right? Commonly as well in the knife tool, what we want to do is we want to run a big slice through an entire object as if it was sort of hit by a sword, right? So if I click out here and then run a cut like this and then press enter, that looks perfect from this side. We've got these three verts, but if I look over the back, it hasn't finished the cut over the other side. And I could always run the cut again and finish it that way, but that's not exactly lined up, although I've gotten pretty lucky. That's very close, but it's not exactly like perfect, right? So if we want an exactly perfect cut that goes through, we tap K, we click off to the side, and then we click through, but we tap C. Before we do anything else, I haven't clicked for a second time, I tap C. And you can see how there's an extra dot showing up on the line. That's because it's now catching this back edge here, right? So that's the telltale sign that you've turned it on properly, is that when you tap C, more dots show up. So if I click and then hit enter, we now see a perfectly planar edge that runs completely through this. And if I wanted to like separate this, I could now say bevel that, delete those faces, and then make two faces out of these interior areas. And now I've sort of cracked or split off a piece. So this is a really good way to use the knife tool, right? To like slice through things like this. Additionally, we can control our snapping using our X, Z, and Y axis snap controls. If I tap K, followed by Z, and then I click, I can see that it's snapping exactly up and down on the Z axis. I can tap X, I can tap Y, although those weren't very good commands, so we'll do it down here. If I tap Y now, it's going to go up into the Y axis. If I tap X, it's going to go down into the X axis. And if I tap Z, it's going to go straight up and down. So we can also snap to 45-degree increments, right? If I tap K and click, I don't actually get the menu that I need to do this. I need to click down here and click the knife tool and make the knife tool the active tool. That brings up these little extra dialogues, which gives us some like extra like selections and whatnot. But if I click this triple drop down here, I can then change this angle snap to say screen 45 degrees. And now when I try a knife tool, it's going to hold it exactly on 45s. So this could be really useful if I go into an orthographic view, something that doesn't have perspective. And I go into say orthographic, I zoom in and I want to make a 45-degree cut here. And then I want to make a 45-degree cut there. And again, if I tap C and then left click and enter, it's going to slice it the whole way through, allowing us very easy access to put a 45-degree there. So that's also very useful. If I tap K and then hold left click and start dragging, it's going to leave a slice through each new edge that I come through. If I go across back and forth across the last cut edge, it's not going to do anything. But if I go across a new edge, it's going to leave a cut at the intersection point. This will also go over existing cuts, right? So if I go up and down like this, I can cut back and forth. Yeah. And so, you know, if you just kind of want to go crazy with this, holding left click will get you a whole bunch of cuts, right? Lastly, we have the knife project tool. This is a bit of an interesting tool in that it requires two objects to work. And it requires objects with bounds, a boundary edge, I guess you could say. So if I have this plane here and I inset this and delete the vertices on the inside, I have like just a series of edges. What I can then do is, from the perspective of my camera, I can slice this through this other object rather than having to make the cuts manually. I could do it from this object, right? So if I click this object, I hit tab to select all of the verts, and then I hold shift and left click the plane up here. If I angle my camera like this and then just go mesh knife project, it's going to slice, like as you can see when my camera was here, it's going to slice straight through in that sort of a manner. If I'm in orthographic view like this and I go mesh knife project, it's going to slice through that way. You'll also note that when you do this, a little knife project window shows up in the bottom left, and you can then choose to turn on cut through or not. You got to be careful though. Each time you run this, it's going to run it from the perspective of the camera, right? So there we go. Something like that would work to say I'm going to cut through from front view. I'm not going to cut through this way, right? Lastly, when we run the knife tool, we also have a handy little toolbar down the bottom. If I tap K, you can see all of these commands and their buttons and hotkeys, etc., are all reminded down here. So you can always like look down here if you need some extra like hints about how things are meant to be used, right? So now I want to just finish up by giving a quick little demo of just a potential example way that you could use the knife tool in action. Let's say, for example, that this is like a marble column, you know. We'll give it a little bit more character. I don't know, something like this for a video game, right? It's just basic prop. But, you know, stone gets chipped all the time. So using the knife tool, making sure to tap C to slice through, I can then sort of start dissolving away pieces of this as if they had been snapped off through impacts or, you know, collisions or whatever have you, you know. A couple edges like that. I might just use a bevel there, drag that down, and then knife tool slice through there, get rid of that. Whoops. Cool, so that just chips the top away a little bit. Now I might also, let's say, run a big cut, like maybe we'll do it at a shallower angle. Something like that. Split that in half with a bevel, and then reapply the faces in there. And then we'll just slide this down slightly. You know, so now we've got a little split through there. Do the same thing again down here. And then we can actually say isolate this part, slice through again, get rid of that whole top surface. Something like that, right? And then we could do like chips on the side. So if I tap K, click, tap C, click, click, enter, It's going to run a slice through like that. I can now press J after selecting those two and move this edge in like this, you know? Or I could move it over something like that. And just maybe act as if like a sword has hit this area a fair bit. We could... I didn't do the knife tool right perfectly there, so that will work instead. You know. So this is just a simple way of adding more character to stone props, but truthfully, you'll use this everywhere. It's an incredibly common tool. You'll use the knife tool a whole bunch. Yeah. Alright, well, I hope you found this video useful. That's the knife tool in Blender.